Call Don now, 682-1270. News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML. Don Carpenter Show. Thanks for joining us this morning. 8:07 here at the studios, and I'm going to try to do this in a tiptoe around this as much as I possibly can, because it is a touchy subject, and I know a lot of people get really passionate about this issue. But the Zimmerman trial, in case you've been living under a rock for the past couple years. George Zimmerman is a guy who lives in Florida. He was a neighborhood watch captain or neighborhood watchman. He was walking on his way to Target one night, and he was carrying a concealed weapon. Actually, I think it might have even been open carry. I believe it was open carry, which is obviously legal in Florida. They have pretty good firearms laws there. Wow, that didn't take long. Let's go to the phones. And now I'll continue this in a second. News Talk, okay, maybe not. So basically, he came across a young kid, 16-year-old kid, 16 or 17. His kid's name was Trayvon Martin, and a scuffle of some sort ensued. And the evidence is starting to show that Zimmerman wasn't the aggressor. And anybody that's been following the trial, it's pretty obvious what's going on. I mean, the evidence that came out yesterday and the testimony yesterday was really, really damning to the prosecution. And they haven't really done pretty much anything right in this trial. They've gotten a lot of help from the judge, as you heard in the top of the hour story. The defense is not going to be able to show an animated version of this, their version of what happened. But the evidence is actually showing that Trayvon Martin was on top of George Zimmerman, who was an out-of-shape, mid-30s guy, and, a 16-year-old kid. He was 6 feet tall, I think 160 pounds or something like that. He was a football player in high school, wide receiver, so he was an athletic kid. And another thing that hasn't been really been able to bring up in the trial is, this kid got in a lot of trouble for a lot of things. There are pictures out there of him holding guns. He had a cell phone with encrypted, hidden text messages and pictures and all this kind of stuff. He was up to no good at some point. He might not have been up to no good at that time, and that remains to be seen. Nobody really knows exactly what happened that night, except for Zimmerman. But his version of the story seems to be borne out by the facts. And, each day the testimony keeps coming through, just keeps enforcing his version of the story. Yesterday's testimony basically said that when the gunshot entered Trayvon Martin's body, it was consistent with George Zimmerman being flat on his back and pulling out his gun and firing into the side of Martin at an angle. Like somebody has you pinned down and they're beating your head into the pavement, which, again, he had injuries on the back of his head. He had a broken nose. There's no question to all of this stuff. This is all fact. But what's going to happen? And, unless some kind of crazy OJ-style verdict comes through, what's going to happen is George Zimmerman is going to be acquitted. And the police departments in the area are already preparing for riots. And that's actually where we're going to start off here. On Monday, so this story was released yesterday, but on Monday, the Broward County Sheriff's Office released a video calling on the public not to riot in the wake of George Zimmerman's verdict, expected this week or next in Florida. And I think it'll probably be next week. I think they're going to wrap up testimony today. I think they're going to wrap up defense testimony today, and probably tomorrow and Friday will be closing statements. The sheriff's office released a statement explaining it was working closely with the Sanford Police Department and other local law enforcement agencies to coordinate a response plan in anticipation of the verdict. And I'll actually play the video for you in a second. It's a short one. But what have we come to that, the wheels of justice are working the way they're supposed to work? What have we come to that we are expecting riots if somebody's acquitted? The video, entitled "Raise Your Voice, Not Your Hands," focuses on attempting to channel reaction into nonviolent responses. It depicts two youngsters, one black teenage boy, one Hispanic teenage girl, Trayvon Martin was a black kid. George Zimmerman is a Hispanic guy. Despite the portrayals in the media, and we'll get to the media portrayals as well. Despite the portrayal in the media that he's a white guy, he's Hispanic. I think his family is from Ecuador, I believe. I'm not sure about that, but he's a Hispanic guy. Let's give violence a rest because we can easily end up arrested, says the boy. I know your patience will be tested, says the girl, and then both conclude that law enforcement has your back. I mean, what have we gotten to that the police department has to make rap videos telling kids not to riot? Let's go to the phones. News Talk 1270, KIML, Don Carpenter Show. You're on the air. Okay. So let's play this video, and then we'll come back and we'll get into some more of this this mess. And this is something I want you to think about during the break. And what have we gotten? What has society done that we now expect riots in the wake of this kind of stuff? The justice system working like it's supposed to.
Raise your voice.
And not your hands.
We need to stand together as one. No cuffs, no guns.
Let's give violence a rest, because we can easily end up arrested.
I know your patience will be tested, but law enforcement has your back.
Let's back up and choose not to act up, and deputies are with us, so no need to act tough.
Let it roll off your shoulders. It's water off your back. Don't lack composure, because in one instance it could be over.
So let's make the choice to raise your voice and not your hands.
I'm Sheriff Scott Israel, and law enforcement does have your back.
There you go. News Talk 1270, KIML, Don Carpenter Show. We'll be right back.
For the latest on the show, follow Don on Facebook. Just search for Don Carpenter Radio. News Talk 1270, KIML. Call Don right now, 682-1270.
News Talk 1270, KIML, Don Carpenter Show, 8:20 here at the studios. And we've been talking about the Zimmerman trial, the George Zimmerman trial in Florida, and the expected riots over the upcoming acquittal. And let's be honest, and unless some kind of miracle of, well, actually some kind of miscarriage of justice happens, some miraculous miscarriage of justice, George Zimmerman is going to be acquitted. There hasn't been a bit of evidence that shows that he's going to be convicted. And they're expecting riots. I mean, what has the world come to that we can't take something like that and, be constructive about it? Let's go to the phones. News Talk 1270, KIML, Don Carpenter Show. You're on the air.
Yeah, Don, if that Zimmerman would have done what the police dispatcher told him to do, stay in his vehicle and observe, this whole mess wouldn't have happened. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, I guess you don't want to discuss it, but here's the thing. The dispatcher wasn't a police dispatcher, it was a county dispatcher, and they don't have the authority under law to tell somebody what to do. I mean, he was a busybody, let's be honest. So the guy's a busybody. I mean, anybody that's a neighborhood watchman has to be a busybody. And they'd had quite a bit of crime in the area. I mean, obviously, if he'd stayed home, none of this would have happened. But he was walking the target for whatever reason. If he didn't have a gun, he probably would have gotten his brains beaten in. So, I mean, you can't shoulda, woulda, coulda and expect to come up with alternative scenarios. What happened. And we'll never know, we'll never know the complete truth. You have to go by the evidence. And even if the guy's guilty, if he's found not guilty, is that really an excuse to riot? And they're expecting riots, and it could be nationwide. That's, the facts of the case are irrelevant to the point that I'm trying to make, that this has become bigger than just one kid getting shot by one guy. And let's go back to the phones. News Talk 1270, KIML. Okay. We're going to do that again, huh? So I actually have, this is a clip from O'Reilly. This is sometime last week, but it's a good clip and it's short about why this is important. And it's bigger than just this case. It really is bigger than just a case. Okay, we'll try the phones again. News Talk 1270, KIML, Don Carpenter Show. You're on the air.
Yes. In reference to the last caller about him, staying in his vehicle, The facts were he wasn't in his vehicle when he was on the phone with the dispatcher.
He was
on.
Yeah, he was walking around trying to follow Trayvon, right?
Right, and when the dispatcher said, "We don't need you to do that," which wasn't a direct order, it was just a suggestion, he started back to his vehicle, and that's when he was jumped out of the bushes by Trayvon Martin.
Yeah, and that's a good point. He wasn't in the vehicle at the time. Plus, even if it was a direct order from the dispatcher, their orders are not lawful orders. They're not the police. I mean, they're just a county dispatcher. They're not the police. So he didn't even have to follow that if he. I mean, obviously, obviously he stuck his nose in somewhere, but it doesn't mean he deserved to get jumped and have his head beaten in. And I mean, he says that Trayvon grabbed for his gun. I mean, he said I think what was the quote? "You're going to die tonight." I mean, that's
correct.
That is. I mean, there's no excuse for that kind of behavior, even if the guy was following him. You just say, "Hey, get away from me," and stop following me.
And the forensic, the pathologist yesterday said that eventually you're going to die getting your head smashed into the concrete. That's damning accusation there. What are you supposed to do? Just take it?
Well, apparently you're supposed to take it because some guy getting $10 an hour answering phones told you to stay in your car. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, what it comes down to is, had Zimmerman been black, it wouldn't have mattered. We wouldn't even know about this case at all. We wouldn't know the names of either person.
And that's the real shame of all of this. That's the real shame of all of this. I mean, in Chicago, what was it, last weekend, 60 people got shot, and nobody cares because it's black on black crime. That's the shame. And we need to start looking at that and say, hey, there's something wrong here. And it does a disservice to the black community to treat them like they're not important until a white person kills one of them or a Hispanic person kills one. I mean, it really. I mean, that's the worst kind of racism that there is, to say, hey, you're not important until a white person or a Hispanic person kills you.
That's exactly right. And O'Reilly had it last night that 91% of black homicides are committed by another African American.
Oh, yeah.
91%.
Yeah, and believe me, we're going to get to that.
Thank you very much, Don.
Yep, thanks a lot. And looks like we have another call. Let's go back to the phones. News Talk 1270, KIML, Don Carpenter Show. You're on the air.
Don, your last caller had it a little bit wrong. It wasn't a white on a black killing, Mr. Zimmerman. It's Hispanic and black.
Yeah.
So he's a double minority there. And the reason, not that we don't care that 60 black-on-black violence or killings happened in Chicago last week, it's that Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, those people that stir the pot, make sure there are racial tensions, they don't care because it's black-on-black. Now, if a white guy was involved, then they could whip it up into some kind of race thing and make themselves a bit more money and still leave the black community poor as dirt.
Well, there's no money to be made on black crime, and I mean, even the president got involved. He said that Trayvon Martin looked like his son if he had a son. I mean, that's highly irresponsible behavior.
Oh, it is. It so very much is. But Jesse Jackson will wear $1,000 Armani suit if it's even that cheap.
Oh, it's probably more than that.
Yet he goes and runs in there and wrings his hand and pretends he's just like these people in these low-income neighborhoods, tenements. Any one of those people that's tried to go to his house and talk to him would first be confronted by security, probably thrown on the ground and arrested for trespassing.
Well, and remember that the police department and the Sanford district attorney didn't file charges until Jesse Jackson and Reverend Al showed up and Eric Holder sent somebody down. No, they weren't going to file charges on this. They were pretty much strong-armed into filing charges, and that's why their case has been so weak, because they were not prepared to prosecute this guy.
I wish there'd be a lot more backbone in our society, that places, like just because an accusation is made, and then the accusation here was, it was a white on black crime, he murdered that poor boy, you better investigate. where, maybe the prosecutor gets a little backbone and tells them, you know what, no, we are not, because every bit of evidence we've got so far shows that Trayvon was in the wrong.
Yeah, and
it might have been the cosmic, you were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and so was Mr. Zimmerman, but that only held us apart where he was until you started beating his head into the concrete. Yeah,
and I mentioned this earlier, but they had an MMA fighting expert, jiu-jitsu expert on the stand yesterday, and he demonstrated with the defense attorney how somebody on top straddling a guy can use the force of gravity to make their punches stronger. And it's easy to kill someone that way.
MMA.
Yeah. That's why a referee in an MMA fight, if you're straddling somebody and hitting them, what they call ground and pound. If you got somebody down and you're beating them and they're defenseless, the referee will stop it because it's so dangerous. Yeah, and with that, we're up against the bottom of the hour break. When we come back, we'll get into why this is important. And why it's important that we get out the word that this is bigger than just this case. It's a larger issue, and that's kind of why I'm talking about it, because it's more than just this one case. There's an underculture of dishonesty in the media, especially. So we'll talk about that when we come back. News Talk 1270 KIML, Don Carpenter Show. We'll be right back.
If it's happening in Wyoming, he's talking about it. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML, Don Carpenter Show. I want to thank you for joining us. 8:36 here at the studios. And if you're just tuning in, we've been talking about the George Zimmerman trial. We haven't really given a lot of time to that over the past few weeks since the trial started. But since things are starting to wrap up and let's face it, we're starting to prepare for an acquittal. And the police departments, especially in Broward County, Florida, I thought Sanford was in a different county, but the Sanford Police Department, the Broward County Sheriff's Department, they're preparing for riots. And Broward County is also, I believe, Fort Lauderdale in that area, southern Florida. They're preparing for riots. And my question is, what has happened to America that this is something that is expected? Obviously, after the LAPD or the LA riots in 92, I guess anything is to be expected. But really, it really is. It's a shame that we've come to this in this country. Let's go to the phones. News Talk 1270 KIML, Don Carpenter Show. You're on the air.
Hey, Don. The fact that the media has devoted so much time to this sort of crap should make us realize that we're being manipulated by them.
Yeah.
All they're doing is focusing on racial crap or something that's going to pull on your emotions when their job is to investigate. And most of that's speaking truth to power. Well, they're not doing that.
Well, and what they are doing is they're putting out misinformation. Even the information that they do put out isn't usually investigated well. You've seen it. We're here in Wyoming, where this kind of thing really isn't a big issue, and we still get calls from people that are still repeating this old thing about the police dispatcher.
Yeah.
If somebody here believes that. And that's, not even anywhere near the case. If somebody believes that here, you can imagine what it's like in Florida or California or New York City. You can multiply that by 1 million.
Well, and what I can't understand is that people allow themselves to be emotionally manipulated by that stuff,
Yeah, and it's something that, none of us knew either Zimmerman or Trayvon Martin. So why should we go out in the streets and throw rocks at cops and burn down buildings for somebody we didn't even know?
Yeah. And we have no stake in it whatsoever. It has nothing to do with us. It's something between Zimmerman and Martin and I guess the police and the people around them. That's it.
Yeah. It really is. It's a shame that people are so easily manipulated by the media at this point.
Yeah. And they have been for years.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't give a damn.
Yeah, this is nothing new. This is just the late. This is just the latest incarnation of it.
And until people actually expect better, this is what they're going to get. And it goes the same with the government. You get the government that you deserve.
Oh yeah.
If you don't ask for any better, you don't get any better.
Yep, and you get the media that you deserve as well.
Yep, because that's what you're paying for.
Absolutely. I want to thank you for the call. I hate to cut you off, but we do have another call. Let's go back to the phones. News Talk 1270 KIML. You're on the air.
Hey Glenn, this is Scott Clem. This whole thing. The question is, well, why is this happening? It's driven by a victim mentality. And it really has to do with the Democratic Party, and it has to do, unfortunately, with race. We know that in the Civil War era, the Democrat Party was the party of slavery. It continued on even with the Ku Klux Klan, and it continues still today. Now, the roles have changed, but really, what the Democrat Party is it's still the plantation owner, if I can say it that way. We have. I was mentioned a moment ago, you have characters like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. And what they're doing is they're propping up this idea that the black race is a victim.
Oh, yeah.
A victim of the white man. And that's how this whole thing started. I remember how it started when this thing first came out in the news. They portrayed Zimmerman as a white man and Trayvon Martin as this poor little 12-year-old black boy who was victimized by this white man, and really what this is all about is to bolster that idea that the black race really is a victim of really Americanism, and that we ought to pay tribute or something or keep ourselves in check against them, and really that's what this is all about.
Oh yeah, and I hate to bring. I hate to bring the Democratic Party in it, but when the president sends somebody from the Justice Department, when the president comes on TV and says that this poor kid looked like his son if he had a son, when the president injects himself into it, he's opening up himself and his party to criticism.
Sure, and it all comes back down to the thing. It's a victim mentality that we are victims. And the whole, we can talk on and on about how that is played out in politics. You take welfare, for example. Welfare is a big thing, especially among black Americans, unfortunately. And you talk about kids growing up without fathers, and on and on and on and on it goes. And really, you think about the Democratic Party, unfortunately, and I'm not trying to just bash Democrats, but because there's some good-meaning Democrats out there. But what's happening here is simply that they're trying to create a culture where they're dependent upon the government. They're the plantation owner. And you have, unfortunately, millions and millions of people, and primarily, we see this in poll after poll, black Americans, they support the Democratic Party. Why? Because they're looking for handouts. And that handout really is, they're keeping them in check. The government is the plantation owner, and they have this idea that they cannot survive without the government. And so, it's this victim mentality, and that's what's driving this whole thing.
Well, and the flip over from black Americans being Republicans to Democrats kind of started around the time of the New Deal. The FDR administration pretty much targeted black Americans and said, hey, look, all of these programs that we're putting in place, you guys can really benefit from this. Vote for us and we'll give you more of it. And it's just built from there. So, this is something that's been going on for probably the last 70 or 75 years.
Exactly. It's this entitlement mentality. And, there's three rules that govern history, especially among nations, democratic nations. The first is the golden rule. He who owns the gold makes the rules. The second is the hand that gives is always above the hand that receives, and we see that even now today in America. And the third rule simply is this, that people will always choose security over liberty. And we see that playing out today. We're giving up our rights as far as security is concerned. We say that we love liberty, but we should be up in arms about this whole NSA thing. We should be up in arms about welfare. We should be up in arms about just our bloated federal government And it is. It's creating a society that's dependent upon the government, and it should not be that way. It should be the other way around.
Yeah, and then it's actually, I don't know if I'm the first person to come up with this, but I'll take credit for it anyway. But I mean, we've developed an entire culture of professional voters. I mean, their only job is to show up on election day and push the right button, and that's all they do. And then they go home and collect their check for the next 4 years.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And it's unfortunate. And we see this especially, again, kind of bringing it back home again. We see this especially among Black America today, unfortunately. And the thing is there are some prominent voices out there, Black conservatives who are crying out and saying, hey, you can have liberty, you can have freedom, quit depending on the federal government for these things. It's not as great as you think it is, and you're suffering as a result. But they don't see themselves suffering. They haven't seen the light, unfortunately, the majority of them. They haven't seen that freedom and liberty is something far better and a far more worth than what the government can give them.
Yeah, and that's the worst kind of racism at all. I mean, it really is. It really is the worst kind of all. And I hate to cut you short. It was an excellent call. I want to get one more call in before the next break. News Talk 1270, KIML, Don Carpenter Show. You're on the air.
Hey, Don, we were talking earlier and I got cut off.
That's all right.
When you talk about, all of them saying there's going to be a race riot or they're going to riot afterwards because if they don't get the judgment that they want, I have to speak in to say something that's really distasteful for me, but you got this Black community, and it's the only way we look at the Black community. They're still holding on to something that happened or that was freed on them over 100 years ago.
Well,
granted, there's been a lot of racism, especially down south, and especially still now down south. But you know what? That doesn't really count to when you're, look at the Rodney King riots. I mean, that's as far as you can get from anything that happened back then. And it was all because they wanted to see Whitey Pay. And then when they rioted, you had Reginald Denny. They took a guy, pulled him out of a truck, took a brick and beat him, throwing a brick in his face. They were trying to kill the man. Yet they got off with a slap on the hand. You didn't really try to hurt this guy.
Oh, yeah.
Yet the only reason those officers were acquitted in the first place, and that double jeopardy to me wasn't applied to those officers, because they were getting ready to just shoot him dead. But the officer in charge said no. I think it was Thurman, can't remember his name, but the officer in charge said no, don't shoot him, subdue him. So they went, and they forget to mention that old Rodney King had already been tasered twice and shrugged it off.
Well, and then his
death or nightsticks was the next option. And since he's still breathing, I'm thinking he'd rather have the nightstick option himself.
Well, and remember they thought he was on PCP, and that kills all your pain sensors, so you can take immense amounts of pain like a taser and nightsticks, and look at what happened to the guy after all this. I mean, after it all happened, and he went on and he got his big lawsuit settlement. He got arrested 10 more times for drugs and alcohol. So I mean,
drugs, alcohol, prostitution.
Yeah, and then he ended up overdosing on something and drowning in his own pool. So I mean, the guy. I mean, he wasn't the innocent person that they were portraying him to be.
And I think you had a caller talk about the victim society, and this is exactly what it is. The Civil War ended a long time ago, and yet we're still being typecast, and they're still trying to typecast themselves as the poor Black man who's been beaten down by the white man, can never get a break, can't get a job, can't do this, can't do that. Oh, government, give me money. And it's the thugs that are in there that, they might have had just wanted they might want to do a protest. You get your thugs in there, you're going to start breaking stuff so they can, loot the place. I mean, even look at Katrina. I wouldn't care, if I saw somebody looting the store and they had a ham and hamburger or something to eat in their hand, I'd help them to their car. But the ones come out of the Walmart with big screen TVs and DVDs under their arm, I would have shot them.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you can use the food, I understand. The big screen TV, I mean, you have Walmart, couple places that just signed off the whole store. It's considered an entire loss. You know, there's Super Walmart has a lot of food in it, but I don't see how you can really justify stealing a TV. And that's part of that victim mentality. Is like, you know.
Yeah, it really
free.
is.
There's nobody here. It's free because we deserve it for some reason.
Yeah.
I forgot. It is our fault because of Katrina.
Oh yeah.
Wasn't it the Justice Scalia down there putting dynamite under the levee?
Well, that's what Farrakhan was claiming. That I think it was Scalia, or it might have been Clarence Thomas even putting dynamite under the levee to blow it up.
I think George Bush helped him though.
Oh yeah, George Bush had his hurricane machine.
Now, even with what I've talked about, I'm trying to couch in the best language possible, but it still has to. It comes down to a black and white because of media and people like Jesse Jackson make sure that there is a division there.
Yep, because they make a living off those divisions.
Oh, they make quite a living off them divisions.
Absolutely.
Thanks, sir. I gotta go now.
Yep. Thanks a lot. You can't put it any better than that. I mean, we have not only do we have a victim mentality, a victim society, but we also have a lot of people that make a living off of it, and a lot of politicians that get elected off of it. I mean, I forget the guy's name, Emmanuel Cleaver, I think. I mean, he just makes up stuff about Tea Party people spitting on him and this kind of stuff, and the media just parrots it like it's nothing. It's a big problem. I don't think we're going to solve it anytime soon. But and we didn't get to any of the audio we were going to talk about, so maybe we'll do that another day. When we come back in the 9 o'clock hour, we're going to be talking to Erin Taylor from the State Lottery Board. We'll talk to her for a little bit, and maybe we'll get back to the Zimmerman stuff after that. But I want to talk about the lottery in the next hour. So stay tuned. News Talk 1270, KIML, Don Carpenter Show. We'll be right back in just a few minutes.
If it's happening in Wyoming, he's talking about it. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270, KIML.